Pansage, Pansear, and Panpour, the world's least favorite starter Pokemon. Commonly known to fans as the elemental monkeys because, they're monkeys of different elements. They were introduced in Generation 5 and were actually a pretty cool part of the game, because the very first gym leader was actually one of 3 that you would battle: triplets and restaurant owners Silent, Chili, and Cress. They would each have one of the 3 Pokemon as a race, but the one that you would battle depended on the starter that you chose at the beginning of the game. By default, you would always be facing the gym leader with the Pokemon strongest against yours, and while that provides a good challenge, you're not completely helpless. In the Dream Yard east of Striaton City, you'll find an NPC who will just try to give you one of these Pokemon, though you don't get a choice of which one. Rather, you'll be given the one that is strongest against the gym leader that you're set to face, as a way of giving you some kind of advantage and better rounding out your team. So in a way, they're a second set of starter Pokemon. Yeah, you don't get to choose these ones, but they are determined by another choice that you make earlier. So for all intents and purposes, they kind of serve the same role as the Kanto starters that you're given in X and Y, and even if you did have the choice, it would be smartest to pick the Pokemon that covers your starter's weakness anyway. Also, giving you an extra tool to use in your journey I think is more helpful than annoying, but hey, that's just me. The true easy mode is having the guidebook and knowing everything you can before each major battle or event. Or the EXP share in Generation 6 onward. But no, the guidebooks are considered nostalgic and cool now. On a side note, Pokemon Black and White released around my birthday, so one of the best gifts I got alongside it was the guidebook, and man did I love this thing. Going through my adventure with all the knowledge I could ever want, accompanied by beautiful official images and graphic design. This video obviously isn't going to be about the guidebooks. I need to get a lot more of them before I can make like a dedicated video about them. But the point is that these things are cool, and the whole idea of using one of the elemental monkeys is a decent chunk in here. Before you even get to the walkthrough parts, there's a section that gets you acquainted with battling and strategy, and there's a dedicated section for Pansage, Pansear, and Panpour. It notes that they can be quite helpful, even telling you where to get them before actually covering the Dream Yard in detail. There's a little summary for each one telling you some of the useful moves they can learn through leveling up or TM, and even just shows the evolution, like spoilers dude. Heck, you could even just catch them later on in the rustling grass of Losthorn Forest too. I had never really known that beyond just the gift that you get before. I guess the point I'm making here is that even being given one of the elemental monkeys was a way of preparing the trainer for what else was to come. It's a quick way to get some diversity on your team with these cute little designs. In games like Pokemon, the more you allow the player to experience in the beginning can be a way of giving them more options and even potentially serve as a lesson in which Pokemon to pick up early on and then decide later whether or not you should keep them. Speaking of which, yeah, it's about time I brought up those evolutions. This is where most people tend to get lost. At first glance, a good amount of players just did not like the look of them. I like them, I think they're pretty cool and have their own little flair. I get what they were trying to do with these Pokemon, and I feel like they stuck the landing. Though in a generation already full of polarizing designs, they don't stick out as definitive favorites in the same way that other more popular Pokemon from these games do. I think that Simisage, Simisear, and Simipour are inoffensive at best and unremarkable at worst. Definitely quite a contrast to just how cute and beloved their pre-evolutions were. These guys are honestly near perfect Pokemon designs. They're simple, lovable, they communicate their themes, and show future potential as basic Pokemon. Their evolutions are fine, but they do sort of feel like they're middle stages in a full line. I do sort of feel that maybe they didn't get 3-stage evolutions because the Unova Pokedex was already the most Pokemon added in a single generation, though more could have been done to better flesh out these Pokemon. Again, I wouldn't completely attribute it to their designs. I mean, sure, maybe they could have had like some extra thing for each of these Pokemon, and maybe their body types could have had a little more variation between them as they evolved. Obviously, it's okay if somebody doesn't like them, but I think there are far worse out of the over 1,000 Pokemon to pick from. I don't think that Simisear deserves to be ranked last of all Pokemon. Honestly, even by Generation 5, primates were some of the most overrepresented in the entire franchise. And yeah, more so today because they just keep adding them. So back in their debut, and even now in retrospect, it might just be that we've been shown other alternatives of better ways to execute the idea of a monkey mixed with a certain element. Yeah, Simisear looks alright, but literally the generation prior we had Infernape, another fire monkey and genuinely one of the best designed starter Pokemon like ever. And their stats and move pool aren't anything to write home about either. So yeah, you could carry these guys with you from the beginning to the very end, but pretty quickly they would be outclassed by other Pokemon that you could catch later on. We could sit here and propose ideas of how to improve them, like mixing around their base stats, giving them better moves or even evolutions, but in a way that kind of defeats the purpose of these Pokemon as they were introduced back then. With these three, we can really drive the point home, because they've been outstanding examples of Pokemon that were just okay. You're allowed to use whatever Pokemon you want when you play through a game. You can use your favorite even if they aren't that good, or you can replace a Pokemon later on if you find something that works out better for you. That second part is kind of the point anyway. It's actually an important thing to teach a player to determine which Pokemon are good and which aren't, and whether they want to keep those Pokemon with them because they're their favorites, or use a different Pokemon for their stats or maybe even their designs later on. Like how many early route Pokemon are genuinely worth keeping on your team all the way through to the league. But even with all that being said, man, I really hope they end up getting some kind of legacy evolution. Mostly because I feel that these are some Pokemon that genuinely have earned it, with their use by the first gym leaders, their importance to the player early on in the game, and their presence in other marketing for Pokemon Black and White. Yeah, they really were just secondary starters and types of mascots of the generation. Also, they have not made an appearance on the Nintendo Switch yet. Maybe all that hate and/or ambivalence had a negative effect on them. Maybe we really did all just convince Game Freak to forget about the elemental monkeys. The truth is that when deciding which Pokemon to bring in when you're cutting the Pokedex in half nowadays, choosing to use 6 slots on these Pokemon was probably a choice I didn't want to make. You know, unless you were to give them those evolutions. Though I can't even believe they didn't appear in the Indigo Disc DLC. I mean, that was literally the Unova region. They just got brand new cards in the trading card game Monkey Trio. Why aren't they here? I really do hope that sometime soon we get to see them again because of that fact. Back when they first made their debut, they were at least able to maintain their relevance. Mostly seen in the anime, as Silent was one of Ash's traveling companions during the Unova arc, and he had a Pansage as his main partner Pokemon throughout the series. And we would see Pansear and Panpour whenever Chili and Crest showed up. Though after that, there wasn't a whole lot going on until pretty recently with Pokemon Concierge, the stop-motion Netflix series. I love that show so much, and I'm glad we're getting more episodes, but one thing I really did appreciate about it was that the 3 monkeys were some of the Pokemon hanging around the resort, helping out the character Tyler and just being cute little guys the whole time. Also, might as well plug in my review for that series that I did back when it came out. Personally, I have always liked the elemental monkeys. I thought they were a charming part of the games, and they fit in pretty well amongst the other basic Pokemon, especially the starters. When I first played Pokemon White version, I had chosen Snivy, so over at the Dream Yard I was given a Panpour that I ended up keeping with me as my main water Pokemon, eventually evolving it into a Simipour and even making it all the way to becoming the champion with it by my side. So that's at least my history with them. But let me know what you think about these Pokemon in the comments below and which is your favorite. Also, did you end up using them during your playthrough, or did you just have them for the first gym and nothing else? Like I said, I do genuinely hope they make a return soon. I mean, not being on the Nintendo Switch at all feels like a crime, especially when they originally had a status very close to starter Pokemon, but not really. At least I have Pokemon Concierge. Anyway, that's enough monkeying around for now. Thank you to every channel member for your continued support, especially the great Gators. DeAndre, GigaWiiU64, Claude Singh, Waterliumiz, Mazhar Siddiqui, Cosmo Zero, Justin Dowes, Mr. Saturn, Rainfrux, Cheez-It62, Swiss Cheese Shiny Hunter, Michael Snyder, Lockadox, Gallantry, GatorKid509, TF, Cheeseburger Lasers, Mathaclog947, Nomad Nobi, Pastel Blood, Taijirai, Justin R, Phantom, and Quago. If you would like to support so your name here gets some access to emotes for comments, live streams, and sometimes early videos, you can become a channel member today. You can also follow me on Twitter as well for more memes. Anyway, this is GatorX, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you all later.
Ash and his friends are back in Pokemon Black and White Adventures in Unova.
You want a battle? You've got it!
Join them on their journey as they test their own limits. I accept your challenge.
Dragonite, let's go!
Battling their way to the Unova League.
Do your best. That's the spirit!
Pokemon Black and White Adventures in Unova. Season premiere, Saturday morning at 8:30, 7:30 Central. Only on Cartoon Network.